Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Jake Ziegler, and I'm here with Brad Garoon. On Never Did It, we look back at the last 100 years of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. Today, we're covering the year 1938, and I'd like to start with the movie that I chose for you. It's called You Can't Take It With You, and I chose this movie for you because it's the only movie from 1938 that I had seen, and so that made it an easy choice. It was also the Best Picture winner for that year, and it's a Frank Capra film starring Jimmy Stewart and Lionel Barrymore. So, I mean, there's a lot of big names in it and, historical significance to it. So it seemed like it would be a good one to dive into. Tell me what you thought of it.
I thought this movie stank. Okay, just real quick. This movie is a sort of tale of two families. You've got the banking family, the son of which is James Stewart, and he's in love with his secretary. And she is the granddaughter of a kooky family. The kooky family owns a property that the banking family wants so they can tear down a neighborhood and put up a factory. And it's a pretty simple plot, right? You would think. Pretty straightforward movie. For the first 30 minutes, I didn't know what this movie was about. I'm like, this thing is bouncing all over the place. Do I even need to care about James Stewart's character? He's barely in the first act of the movie.
Yeah, hardly at all.
I was very confused by that. I mean, granted, this is 1938. It's still early in his career. But, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I want to start by saying I like Frank Capra movies. You gave me a Frank Capra movie for this podcast that I liked a lot. It happened one night.
Mm-hmm.
I gave you, we haven't done the episode yet, but Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I think it's very good. Speaking of James Stewart, I just don't know what's going on here. I mean, at first I was almost intrigued. I was like, wow, is this like a Mr. Popper's Penguins kind of thing? Like, what is going on in the grandpa's house? So the grandpa who they want his property, in his house, he has his daughter, her husband, their two daughters, one of their husbands, and the middle husband, the daughter's husband, the middle generation husband. He has a lab in the basement, and he has all these other people who are helping him tinker with like fireworks and toys and stuff. And I was like, oh, is this going to be a Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory or some kind of like Disney style? Like, oh, look how cute and effervescent and
I thought of Ball of Fire a little bit, where you have all those people living in that same house. I mean, those were all men. That was all men, so it's not like a family. But like it reminded me of that a little bit. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, they're making an encyclopedia, and we're making fireworks.
Sure.
And and then the granddaughter's husband is a musician and a former football player for Arkansas, and he's like real Southern. And then there's like the black couple who help, and I was like, that feels weird.
Yeah, that's a little that's a little late 30s.
Yeah, I was like, are they part of the family or not? They're only ever in the kitchen, so that's pretty strange.
Mm-hmm.
The moral of the story is everyone in the house is really happy, and they're living life on their own terms. Is basically
they're doing what they want. Yeah, they're doing their own thing.
Right. To the point that when the grandfather goes to tell the banking father that he's not going to sell the house, he poaches someone from the office to come and live at his house and make toys. And I was like, oh, maybe that'll be like our entree. Like, he's never seen the house before. We'll see it through his eyes, like how kooky this family is. And it seems like it's going to be that for the first scene. And then we barely ever see him again for the rest of the movie. But they're all living life on their own terms, except for the other granddaughter, who is Jimmy Stewart's secretary. Why? Like, is that what she wanted, was to be a secretary? That felt very like out of step with what the family was about. But despite that, she wasn't like a black sheep of the family. It just happened to be her job. It was just a way for the plot to have her know James Stewart and be in love with him. Anyway, they want to get married. And then what it becomes clear what the movie is about is these two families, are they going to get along? And at the same time, there's a plot in motion to steal the house from the kooky family, but it all just felt so like jagged. Anyway, that's how I felt about it. Jake, I know in 2016 you watched this movie twice and you gave it 4 stars both times. Yes. What did you think about it in 2024?
I liked it a little bit less this time, but I still gave it 3.5 stars this time because it's got a lot of issues. I don't disagree with a lot of these issues, but I still really like the kooky family, and like some of the events in it still like kind of make me feel good in just a kind of artificial movie sort of way. Like just seeing how many friends the grandpa has, like when they get to the big scene at the end, like there's a lot of things about the movie that just kind of make me feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. I don't think it's a great movie or a perfect movie or anything like that. So I bumped it down to 3.5 stars, but it did make me feel good. So I'm still going to say that I enjoyed it despite its issues and inconsistencies.
Well, let's talk about those inconsistencies, because I felt the same way as you when they got to the scene in the courthouse. So there's a point where everyone in the family gets arrested, essentially because the fireworks factory in the basement is illegal. They find out.
That's when they got to the fireworks factory. It was right then.
That's why you like the movie, because they got to the fireworks factory.
That's all I wanted.
So they get arrested for fireworks, but it's not just fireworks. It's also they had what they thought was a genius marketing plan to put little messages in these candies that I think the granddaughter makes. She doesn't really want to make candies. She really wants to be a dancer. Oh, I've got stuff to say about that too. So they put these messages in the candies, but the messages they don't realize all sound like a communist plot. And that was pretty funny. Like, I thought that was cute. I'm like, they fucked up. That's funny. So they all go to jail, and it happens to be on a night when James Stewart's parents are visiting, because even that was so convoluted. It was supposed to be the following night, but Stewart wanted his parents to see the family in their regular environment.
I think that was convoluted. I thought that actually made a lot of sense to me, because he didn't want them, he wanted his family to meet the family as they were, not like if they were pretending to be somebody else. Like that, to me, was like, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay, but it's stupid. I heard the explanation. It's dumb, because you actually want the marriage to be a success, and he sabotaged it. I mean, I'm glad that it went badly, because it taught him a lesson about not trying to orchestrate the situation, which never comes into play anyway. Yeah, so they all end up in jail. And I thought that the scene in the jail with the kooky grandpa putting the harmonica in the pocket of stingy grandpa, and then the subsequent court case where the entire community came out to pay bail to pay the fine for the fireworks factory, those were both like pretty great scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But then it goes on for another half an hour. There's so much more movie after that. That would have been a great place for, like, the dad sees that this is a good family that has good values. And also I love that the community came out and did this for him. We're not going to do this to the community. But it takes another half hour to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing about the community paying for the fines, which I thought was nice, is that the stingy grandpa actually offers to pay it first, and the community is like, "No, absolutely not. We don't want your money." There's all these little things that kind of lead to his catharsis that comes, and it comes in the same way as the Lionel Barrymore grandpa had it, because the Lionel Barrymore character, he tells his story a couple of times where he's like, "Oh, I just I went up this elevator every day for whatever, and then one day I just decided I wasn't having any fun, and I went back down the elevator." And then the banking grandpa does the same thing. He goes up the elevator to make his big business deal, and then he just nopes right out of that and goes down the elevator, kind of does the same thing, and has this big awakening, and goes and plays harmonica.
So that's nice. Did it have to come after a brand new character shows up and dies? That was weird. Remember that? The guy shows up in the boardroom. He's like, "You can't do this to me. You're boxing me out of the deal." I don't know why I'm doing my James Stewart impression. He wasn't James Stewart.
It certainly wasn't, no.
And then he goes to the bathroom and has a heart attack and dies.
Yeah, well, that was his old. That was part of everyone was telling me, like, everyone that you've ever been friends with, it's like no one's ever, everyone's gonna leave you. I don't know why he had to die, but
he didn't have to die.
He really didn't have to die. The one scene where he told him off would have been sufficient.
I didn't even really like that because we hadn't met him yet in the movie. So he just kind of comes out of nowhere. Okay, so that's one thing that I found really extraneous. Here's another one. We talked about My Man Godfrey, which is a great movie. I like it a lot. I like it a lot more than this.
Me too.
In My Man Godfrey, there's one character that we both, when we podcasted about, were like, what's going on here? And that actor got nominated for an Academy Award for his role in that movie. And that actor is Misha Auer. And he shows up in this movie, too, as pretty much the same character. And all I could think, I think I wrote this in my Letterboxd review, what photos did he have of studio executives that he's popping up in these movies in roles that do nothing for the movie? That was wild.
Wrestle, man.
But why did he want to wrestle? He was a dance teacher.
Yeah, made no sense.
This is also a movie about people who say they do what they want to do, but they're not doing the thing they want to do. Like the girl who made wonderful candy, but then danced. And she's terrible at dancing. I'm like, I get it. There's like a lot, but that could have been two different characters. I don't know. I was so frustrated by this movie. There was so much more.
Oh my God, I'm so annoyed.
I get the things you enjoyed about it. In fact, there are things I enjoyed about other movies that came out in 1938 that we'll talk about later, movies that aren't in the title of this episode. But this was not one of them for me. And I both can and cannot believe that this won the Academy Award. I was looking at the slate. They did 10 nominees for Best Picture in 1938. A lot of chances to get it right. Of my top 5 movies of 1938, only one of them appears in the Best Picture nominees, and that's Robin Hood, which is a cool movie that Michael Curtiz accidentally directed. Yeah, it's kind of like a weak slate. I mean, there's some interesting movies that I do actually want to see, but by and large, I'm kind of blown away by the stuff that was popular back then and the stuff that has since become more well-regarded. And this one, which feels like, I don't know, Green Book to me.
It's certainly not, like I said, I don't think it's a bad film by any means, but yeah, I wouldn't consider it like a strong winner or anything like that.
Yeah, to me, it's a bad movie in that it's structured poorly. It's got scenes I really enjoyed. It never felt like torture, but there were so many times where I was thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to, like, what am I supposed to feel here? Who am I supposed to focus on?
Yeah.
So yeah, Best Picture. What other Oscars did it win?
It actually only won two. It won for just one picture and director for Frank Capra. Those are the only two that it won. But it was up for. It also lost five of them. It was up for. Spring Byington was up for supporting actress. She played Penny, which is Alice's mom. I don't recall her doing much of anything like in the movie. I mean, the category was only. This was only the third year that it existed, so maybe they just didn't quite have it down yet or something. I'm not sure. Or maybe she was just, a very respected character actress of the time or something. I'm not sure, but she was the lone acting nominee from the movie. And then it was also nominated for the screenplay, cinematography, sound, which at the time they nominated the studio for sound and not like individual sound recorders, and then the film editing as well. But just picture and director were the only two that it won.
It got me thinking that, like, well, first off, I saw that she had been nominated. I'm like, what are you talking about? That was the Michelle Auer nomination for My Man Godfrey. Like, she didn't do any.
Nothing wrong with what she does, but like, it's not. She didn't even have like a big scene or anything. She didn't even have like that like one scene you could point to and be like, oh, well, that's why. There wasn't even that.
The other mom had like had like a whole thing. She was evil and nasty, and she like was
like I could have seen like because she's a villain. I could have seen it much more if it was her who got nominated. Yeah, but
no, it was bizarre. All she did was sit at the typewriter and say, "I can't get out of this room." When she was like stuck at a point in her script.
I was like, I saw it was her. She got nominated. I said, her?
Yeah. Major egg moment. Very strange. Anyway, so this is what it got me thinking, and maybe you can help with this. Were Oscar Best Picture nominees back then mostly box office successes?
That's a good question. I think for the most part, yes. But that's a really good question. I actually don't know. I don't know if I can say that with 100% authority.
Well, this was a pretty big hit. This made back its budget like 3 times.
Oh, wow.
So it stands to reason. Yeah, maybe that's why. And like the other movie that we're going to talk about in a second, and most of the other movies on my top 5 of 38 list, like, were not huge hits. But Robin Hood was a big hit. And it was nominated. And it was like a huge epic, right? A big swashbuckling epic. Shall we talk about Bringing Up Baby?
Let's talk about Bringing Up Baby. Had you seen this before?
I hadn't, but I really wanted to because I love What's Up, Doc. And What's Up, Doc was Peter Bogdanovich's love letter to Bringing Up Baby. And you can kind of see it. Yeah.
It shows.
Mostly in that Katherine Hepburn is kooky. Now, she's not a cartoon character in the way that Barbra Streisand is a cartoon character, but she is operating outside of reality. Or the reality, even the heightened reality that everyone else is in. Like, Cary Grant plays a very cartoonish archaeologist wearing a white coat, engaged to a frigid woman who really doesn't care about him. And all the people in Katherine Hepburn's family that we meet are all cartoon characters too. And their friends, like the hunter, is very cartoonish. And I just had a feeling it was going to be a lot of fun because I trust Bogdanovich to have had fun taste. Hepburn and Grant were sort of something of a team around the time. They weren't like Spencer Tracy and Hepburn, but they made 4 movies together, 2 in 1938. And this was the least successful of the 2, but has a much bigger footprint now.
Yeah, what's the other one?
Yeah, it's called Holiday.
Oh yeah, this one has the much bigger footprint.
But like you, I saw your Letterboxd review. I also did not know that Baby was a leopard. 1, it was fun. 2, I was like, wow, the movies were crazy. Live leopard on the set. That's wild.
Yeah, what do we keep saying about these old movies? How did they do that stuff back then? They just did it.
They just did it. So I actually looked into this, and there was a trainer that was always there with the whip, like ready to go. Animal abuse. That's how they did it. Yeah. So this movie is about, like I said, it's about an archaeologist who is he's going for $1 million grant, which I did one of the things that you must have if you watch old movies on your phone is an inflation calculator. It's a lot. He's going for $1 million grant so he can finish excavating this giant dinosaur he has. And at the same time, he's also gotten the femur that he's been looking for. And the femur plays a big role.
It's a clavicle.
Oh, excuse me. It's a clavicle. You're right. Which I should know because he said it 100 times.
That's right. That's the only reason. Oh, yes. It's a specific kind of clavicle, too. It's, oh gosh, what is it?
An intercostal clavicle.
Intercostal. Yep. There you go. I was just looking it
up. So yeah, he's got the intercostal clavicle, and he's got to get married tomorrow to a woman who doesn't seem that interested in him.
Like in the middle of the afternoon, too. It's just like, it's more like an appointment than a wedding.
Yeah. During the week. The night before, he has to go see this financier who's connected to a wealthy woman who can get him this $1 million. And while he's playing golf with this financier, he meets a kooky lady who's the character. It's Katherine Hepburn. And she steals his ball by accident. And she's clearly just like living life how she wants to live life.
She could fit in at the house with the kooky you can't take it with you family.
They would have loved her. And he's very frustrated by her because he's so buttoned down. And then he goes to dinner the next night to try to apologize for skipping out on golf because he gets caught up. His car gets smashed by this woman. Actually, she tries to steal it. She's so kooky.
Grand Theft Auto.
And so then he goes to this fancy black tie dinner the next night, and she's there. And there's a case of like mistaken. Actually, much like What's Up, Doc?
It's so much like What's Up, Doc. I was almost like, What's Up, Doc is like almost a remake.
Yeah, they switch. There's a bag switch, and then there's a psychiatrist who's there. And that's kind of funny because as the movie goes on, he more and more runs into them and decides that they're insane, which leads to a climactic jail scene. Hepburn and Grant had already been in Sylvia Scarlett together, so it was known that they had chemistry. So RKO puts them together for this. She was like contracted to RKO at the time. And the whole thing is just an excuse for them to be together and for her to frustrate him, much like What's Up, Doc? What'd you think about it?
I mean, it's a delight. The whole thing is, I mean, it's just funny to watch them bounce off each other for the whole movie. I mean, Cary Grant makes an ideal straight man. Katherine Hepburn is just flitting around doing her Katherine Hepburn thing through the whole movie. I mean, just being just a ridiculous human being. You know, just everything about it is ridiculous. And, you know, and then there's a leopard in the movie. Let's not forget that the whole movie is about like chasing after a leopard and a dinosaur bone. And I mean, just looking at it on paper, it's just positively ridiculous. And then not only is there a leopard in the movie, but there's a second leopard in the movie. But it's played by the same leopard. So you got one leopard doing a dual performance, which is really impressive.
It actually is, because the leopard is like, he is very different in the two roles.
Yeah, they've got like one of the leopards is very aggressive and the other leopard is more docile. And yeah, however they got the leopard to do that, whatever abuse that they inflicted on it is, I mean, it really worked out well for the movie. I don't know, are we advocating for animal abuse? That's not, I'm not intending to advocate for that, but however they did it, yeah, I mean, the leopard stuff is really good. And it's really funny. I mean, you know, Cary Grant, when he starts getting frustrated, the scenes with the family and everything, and there's the one scene where they're trying to have dinner and the dog has buried the intercostal clavicle. You know, the dog discovers it and he's buried it somewhere on the property. And there's a scene where they're trying to have dinner. And Cary Grant keeps getting up because he wants to follow the dog, because he wants to find where the dog has buried the bone. So every time the dog gets up to go somewhere, Cary Grant gets up and follows the dog to see if he's going to go lead him to where he buries it. So he keeps getting up and following the dog, and then he comes back and sits down and then gets up and follows the dog again. It's just all these funny little, you know, just little comedic bits to it. The physical parts of it are really funny, and they're just, you can just tell too, like, that they're having a great time together, and everyone it's really kooky and funny, and yeah, just a delight.
I think that people who've only seen Cary Grant in like North by Northwest need to see some of these older movies. It was underrated to me how good of a physical comedian he was. One, in this one, yeah, that scene's hilarious. That scene is taking place at the dinner table of this woman, the rich woman who has the $1 million to give away. It turns out is Katherine Hepburn's aunt. It's this woman's dog. And then Katherine Hepburn immediately falls in love with Cary Grant.
Who could blame her?
Well, he's so stuffy in this one. I kind of could.
So handsome without his glasses on.
He's incredibly handsome without his glasses, which get smashed pretty early in the movie. She wants to keep him around, so she lies to her aunt, who immediately hates him. Oh, we have to talk about that scene. And says he's a hunter and that he was traumatized while hunting.
He got clawed by a tiger.
Right, and he doesn't want to talk about it. That's how she explains his eccentricities. But the aunt doesn't buy it, so she invites her hunter friend over, and he is very, very, very funny. He's played by Charles Ruggles, which I think is the best performance in the movie.
That could be true.
So funny. Has like all the best lines. When he like finally finds the leopard that he doesn't believe is in the area, he freaks out. But he has the best line in the whole movie, which is he doesn't want to let the old lady know that there's a leopard there. And he goes, "Aren't you cold out here without a gun?" That's what the line is. It's so good. Yeah, so it's very funny. The reason for me it's a 4-star movie and not a 5-star movie, it does a little bit like drag at the end and doesn't really know how to end. They all end up in jail. I guess in every movie in 1938, everybody ends up in jail.
Yeah, gotta go in front of a judge, man.
And while they're all in jail, this scene goes on forever. But it does have Katherine Hepburn pretending to be a prostitute and who's got info on gangsters, and that's how she escapes from the jail. It's a very funny bit of acting, but it goes on for so long. And then it ends finally with, of course, they get together and they destroy the dinosaur he's been working years to restore.
Which he takes remarkably well.
Well, his whole life has changed because she's in it. The one thing I didn't buy when he was like, "It turns out I love you too." I'm like,
yeah. Do you?
Why do you? Granted, she's gorgeous, but why?
Right.
Pretty fun stuff. I enjoyed it quite a bit. We didn't mention this, which is kind of nuts, but it was directed by Howard Hawks. And I think this is our second Howard Hawks movie on the podcast.
Yep, yeah, because he did His Girl Friday.
Speaking of Cary Grant, I think Cary Grant's way more fun and likable in this one than he was in His Girl Friday.
We should mention though too about this movie that it was like, I think you mentioned briefly that it was a failure, like a huge financial failure. It actually got Katherine Hepburn labeled as box office poison.
It was this and Holiday. Which was the other Cary Grant Hepburn movie. Neither of them were box office successes, even though both of them are quite good. And then it took a long time for her career to turn around. Cary Grant somehow didn't have the same problem. Funny that.
Yeah, weird how that works. And of course, that would mean obviously no Oscar love for this movie or anything, but it was, I believe, one of the first films that was selected by, I've talked about this a little bit recently, the National Film Preservation Board. It was selected very early on for that. So it does have a legacy that has lasted. And obviously, we're talking about it on a podcast in 2024.
And it's in the Criterion Collection, which is, it's not everything. I mean, Risky Business, which we love, but is... do we need to preserve Risky Business? Not sure. That's in the Criterion Collection, too. So you mentioned you've only seen these two movies from 1938.
Yes.
I have decided that I'm a freak, and I want a list for as many years as we can. For me, You Can't Take It With You didn't make the list because I only gave it 2.5 stars. So I had to watch and find 4 good movies. I'm going to real quick go through my top 5 just to see, give people a sense of what I did like from the era. My number 5 is a French film called Port of Shadows, which is pretty cool. So the noir movement didn't really start until the 1940s, and it started in America. And it's funny that a French genre name is an American genre, but it was French film critics who gave it that name. And this almost feels like a noir. It's got the mood of a noir, but it's really more of a sad romantic tragedy about a guy who defects from the French military and gets caught up in some trouble in the port town that he goes to when he's trying to get out of the country. My number 4 is The Adventures of Robin Hood. So I don't like Errol Flynn. I don't like his face. I don't like what he's about. I find him annoying to look at and to experience. But this movie is really, really fun. So it was directed by William Keighley, but I guess the studio didn't trust that he was doing a good job, or he got sick. Hard to know which one is the truth. And then Michael Curtiz came in to fix the movie. It was kind of like a Ron Howard Solo situation. They're both credited on the movie. But Errol Flynn plays Robin Hood. Olivia de Havilland plays Maid Marian. Basil Rathbone plays essentially the Sheriff of Nottingham. He's not called that. I don't think he's called the Sheriff of Nottingham in the original story, but he's the Sheriff of Nottingham. And most importantly, Claude Rains plays Prince John and continues in the tradition of making Prince John pretty gay that Peter Ustinov would do in the 1970s Disney version. It's great. Eugene Pallett, who we loved in My Man Godfrey, plays Friar Tuck, and he's so funny as Friar Tuck. I loved it. It's really fun. It's Technicolor. It looks so cool. It came out before The Wizard of Oz, so it's like a cool color film. It's the color film before all the color films. My number 3 is Bringing Up Baby, and it is fun to watch this next to What's Up, Doc, and I makes me kind of want to watch What's Up, Doc again to see like what was the leopard of What's Up, Doc. My number 2 is The Lady Vanishes, which is a really cool early Alfred Hitchcock movie. You haven't seen The Lady Vanishes?
Never did it.
So we got to get deeper into Hitchcock. It's a great one. It's a woman gets on a train, this like kind of stuck up young lady gets on a train out of it's a fictional company, but it's German country. I mean, it's a fictional country, but it's Germany. This was like one of those we don't want to piss off Hitler situations. This old lady who had helped her on the train disappears, and she doesn't know. And she'd been hit on the head, this young lady, before she gets on the train. So it's a question of, did she imagine the old lady, or is someone kidnapping the old lady, or something like that? Cool. And my number 1 is Holiday, which is the other Grant Hepburn movie from 1938, which was a play in 1928, and you can feel that. I mean, it was remade as a movie in 1930. I've never seen it. I don't know anyone who's ever talked about it, and then remade here. And this feels more like a play. It's much smaller in scope than Bringing Up Baby, but Grant gets to play like a real person and not a cartoon. And it's like a very sweet love story between Cary Grant and Doris Nolan, but then Katherine Hepburn is in the wings. And you can see that Hepburn and Grant are better suited for each other. I don't know. I just thought this movie was really good. Grant's like successful, but not rich, pretty much like a Wall Street guy. And then he meets Doris Nolan on vacation. And she, unbeknownst to him, when he proposes to her, she's part of a super rich banking family. So it's got its connections to You Can't Take It With You, too.
Interesting.
And I love it. I give 4.5 stars. I think it's like a really great movie and highly recommend it. So
nice.
So I recommend Bringing Up Baby. I really recommend Holiday.
I have a top 20 of the 1930s of the decade that I've been keeping.
Yeah.
You Can't Take It With You was formerly in that list from when I had seen it before. It has since fallen out of that list because I have only 4-star movies in that list, and it's a 3.5 now. So it's not in the top 20 anymore. But Bringing Up Baby is in the top 20. It's at number 16 in my top 20 of the decade right now.
Pretty good. What is before and behind it?
Number 15, right ahead of it, is The Thin Man, and number 17 right behind it is Frankenstein.
I've never did it, The Thin Man. I think this is way better than Frankenstein. But you like Frankenstein more than I do.
I do. And I still like Bringing Up Baby more. So, I mean.
So cool. Jake, I wanted to show you my Isotopes hat.
I do love that hat. That's a great hat. I've seen you wear that before.
Oh, well, then never mind. Thank you for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you're not watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on something else, please check out our YouTube channel because it has all sorts of cool stuff that we don't put on the Spotify feed. Because we're so handsome and we want you to look at our faces. Oh, my eyebrow. How can I say that as I do that to my eyebrow?